Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be going over the PvP best in slot gearing for rogues in TBC, and this is kind of going to be the ultimate guide to rogue gearing in PvP for TBC, because I'm going to be covering, like every item that is remotely decent for PvP for every single slot, ranked in terms of how powerful the item is. And the way I was able to accomplish this was actually by looking at the best in slot gear list that Mir created. And if you guys don't know, I'll have a link to Mir's description below, or a link to his Twitch in the description below. He's considered like the best TBC rogue by far, and he is, compiled his best in slot gear list here. So what I've done is I've taken that and I've used it and extracted stats from it, right? So if he selects this ring as his best in slot ring, I looked at every other ring and I said, okay, the only way that this ring can be the best is if, stamina is worth this much, agility is worth this much, so on and so forth. I looked at the enchants as well and specific armor choices, like explicitly not using a PvP cape, not using PvP neck, and going for raid legs instead of the PvP gladiator legs. And I've reverse engineered stats, and I've come up with these stats. So we've got, the big things that jump out is that stamina is not valued very high in his gear set. You've got resilience is decently valued. Crit is not super high, and that's going to lead to a lot of attack power gemming being the primary way to fill out all the gem slots. And the goal of this, as you're kind of watching this, you're probably like, well, wait a second, resilience has a differing value depending on how much you have, and depending on how much health you have, stamina might be better. Depending on what comp you're playing, your attack power might be more important or less important, and that is true. And so what the point of this video is this is a general guide to how good items are, and relatively speaking, how strong they are in terms of how many stats they provide that are good for PvP. And so what I would encourage you to do is, when going through this link, I'll put it in the description, if you see items that are close together, select the item that is going to be best for your character, right? So if we look at something like wrists, a lot of you are not going to be playing Primal Strike. So I've listed here that if you use the Primal Strike 3 set, it can be very powerful. But obviously you're just going to gloss over that and go straight to the general leather bracers. But if you were looking to the wrist slot to increase your damage and you don't need more resilience, you don't need more stamina, you can go with one of the more offensive options instead. So I would encourage you, as you're going through or watching the video, to keep in mind that a lot of the items that are in tiers are close together in power, and you can definitely go with more or less resilience depending on the comp, and more or less offense depending on the comp and what you're playing, whether it's 2s, 3s, and so forth. So this is a general gearing guide, and obviously the exact situation you're in might change how you choose to gear. But without further ado, let's get into the gearing. Now, there's a ton of items to cover, so I am going to gloss over some things, but I will try my best to cover, the most important stuff. So first of all, why is Dragon Maul Abyss? Well, it is the hardest hitting weapon in the game. It has this, because of that 2.7 slow speed and the high DPS, it ends up being the hardest hitting weapon. And the haste proc is really nice as well. So Dragon Maul is the best, but very close behind you have the Gladiator Weapons. And if you can get the Gladiator Weapons, it is definitely not required by any means that you go blacksmithing. However, a big advantage of going blacksmithing is you save arena points that you would have spent on a weapon, and you can use them on other pieces of gear. And that is the main reason why blacksmithing is so attractive, even if you're someone who is going to have the rating requirement to get a weapon, right? Because it saves you all those arena points. Other great alternatives that are really good are going to be Spike Blade and Hope Ender. There's other rating alternatives that are great as well. They're just not quite as good in Fool's Bane and Big Bad Wolf's Paw. There's some good options that have procs. Drakefist Hammer is the lesser version of Dragon Maul. You've got Blink Strike. Blink Strike I don't think is going to be quite as good in PvP, because the chance on hit is just not as potent. You're not going to have nearly as much hit rating. Your additional swing you're going to get is just not going to do nearly as much damage. You're going to have less buffs. You're not going to be fully raid buffed from all the different classes that give buffs in TBC, and you're just, the lack of hit chance is going to mean your auto attacks are just going to miss a lot more. So Blink Strike is still good, but not quite as good. Moving down, you've got Vindicator and Blade Fist. I would use basically anything in the great tier up to the best tier. Any of those weapons I would be comfortable using long term in arena, and would definitely be something worth shooting for to use. I personally would not use anything in the good or mediocre tier as a weapon that I am planning to use for a long term, grind in arena, and I would try and get something in the great tier or above. Now Runic Hammer is here. Don't really make this. Same thing goes with the Felsteel Longblade. These are very expensive weapons, and I put them here for the sake of completing the list. But Vindicator's brand is most likely going to be cheaper and better when it comes to a weapon that you can get with gold, as you can just buy Aldor Exalted Rep. I want to mention some good options as well. We've got the PvP Honor Sword is about as good as just items you can get from normal dungeons, which is a little disappointing. So I personally would not bother getting the PvP weapon unless that's the only thing you're doing and you're not planning on doing any dungeons. I would be content getting any of these other options that, across multiple dungeons, you got 4 different weapons here from normal dungeons that would be decent. Also, Gressel, wanted to mention that, still good from all the way from Classic. And then rounding out the mediocre tier, you got MSA, still decent, but not quite as good as some of the other options. And you've got some other, a dungeon item, a quest item, and some other options there. But with that, let's move on to the offhand. Now, the offhand is a little more involved. I'll try and keep it really simple. But basically, when it comes to offhands, you're going to want to keep extra offhands, as you can swap your offhand mid-fight in arena to change the poison on your weapon. So if I wanted a wound poison on my offhand sometimes, crippling poison on my offhand sometimes, and like mind-numbing poison on my offhand sometimes, I can actually have 3 separate offhands, poison each of them individually, and use a macro to swap to them. And this is something a lot of really good rogues will do, and this is not something that you're probably going to do right away, but I would still encourage you not to throw away fast offhands that have good stats that you can use in this way, even if you're not planning on doing that right out the gates. The other thing about offhands that is important is how Shiv works. Essentially, Shiv, a new ability in TBC, it's very important. It costs 20 energy plus 10 times the speed of the weapon, which it's not as complicated as it sounds, right? This dagger is 1.4 speed. Shiv costs 34 energy. This weapon is 0.1 speed slower, which means Shiv now costs 35. This is 1.6. That means Shiv costs 36. So it's pretty simple. It just goes up by 1 for every 0.1 that you have in terms of speed. And the most important thing when it comes to Shiv is, the faster the offhand, it's going to save you energy. And also, if you keep it under 1.5 speed, it can make your energy management overall a little bit better, because 1.6 speed is going to cost 72 energy with 2 shivs, whereas 1.5 is right on 70. And sometimes just that 2 extra energy can add up to you not being able to get an ability off if you end up at 58 energy instead of 60, or a 33 energy instead of 35. So it can cost you. That's why you do want to prefer faster offhands. So with that said, the best offhand is going to be Gladiator Shiv, followed by the other Gladiator weapons. They're all really good. Feel free to use the Gladiator Sword offhand if you want it for PvE. It's barely worse than the Shiv, and eventually you might want to get them both anyway to swap out offhands for poison. Down in the next tier, you've got some great alternatives. Again, Blade of the Unrequited and Blaze Guard hit really hard, have amazing stats, but unfortunately, they are 1.6 speed, so be leery of that. Other great options that are faster would be Feltooth Eviscerator, Dirge, Searing Sunblade, and then another option, you got Guile of Karazi, which is a little bit on the slower end too. Beyond that, you've got Latros, you've got the PvP Fast Dagger, also a good option. Warp Splinterthorn, Talon Vanzu, a lot of different options here. Check them out. Again, follow the link in the description. You can check all this stuff out for yourself. Personally, the offhand is less important than the main hand. I would be fine using really anything in the good tier and above. I would not be super worried about an amazing offhand right out the gates. Obviously, it would help. I think trying to get the Felltooth Eviscerator, or if you have enough badges, just laying around, something like a Searing Sunblade can definitely tide you over for quite a while. And even if you're someone who has Latros for like raiding, that is definitely a great option to use for a while too. So a lot of great offhand options. Next, I want to look at ranged weapons. Now, when it comes to ranged weapons, I've listed a bunch of options, but in reality, you're always using a thrown weapon. You really don't want to ever use a non-thrown weapon because thrown weapons allow you to use deadly throw. So, I mean, for, again, completionist sake, I showed you the stats of the other items. For whatever reason, if you just don't feel like ever pressing the deadly throw ability, you could use something like a Sun Fury Bow of the Phoenix. Technically has the best stats. But in reality, your best options, the Brutal Gladiator War Edge, is the best one. Spine Sever is really good as well, but it's a BOE from pickpocketing. And beyond that, there's not a ton of great options. The Gruul thrown weapon is pretty decent too. And the Sethic Feather Darts and the Felsteel Whisper Knives are other thrown weapon options. Moving on to the trinkets. Now, most of the time when it comes to trinkets, you're going to be using just a PvP trinket. Now, your other trinket slot, you generally want an active trinket. And one of the best ones is going to be the Night's Eye Panther, as it not only gives you that active you're looking for, that it's going to increase your burst on a target, but it also increases your effective stealth level, which helps make you harder to be detected in arena, especially in something like 2v2 when you don't want to be seen easily. So Night's Eye Panther is really good, does require jewel crafting, and is the reason why rogues, a lot of them are going to be going for jewel crafting. And again, this is, best in slot. But other alternatives that are also great, just pure AP trinkets like Bloodlust Brooch, Slayer's Crest are good. Likewise, Core of Arkelos or any other green you get while leveling in TBC can also be decent early on. Another example of on-use trinket, Abacus increases haste. Icon can allow you to ignore armor, which can be good against squishies, but kind of terrible against tankier enemies. And then also Badge is still, an item that can reduce armor on enemies, just like it did in Classic. You also have Dragonspine Trophy. Now, this is not necessarily the best thing ever in Arena in terms of bursting an enemy down in a specific window, like some of these other trinkets, but it is just such a, powerful item that it still can be decent. Also wanted to mention some gadgets. I don't think either gadget is, Polterizer cannot be used in Arena, number one. And the rocket launcher, I don't think is super great when it comes to Arena. It's going to be pretty difficult to get off. And even if you get it off, I don't think it's that impactful. So, just wanted to mention that as well. Now let's move on to armor. So as we start looking into armor, a few important things to mention. So number one, I am going to be ranking items with and without set bonuses so that you have a better idea of how good an item is. So what this would mean is if I am ranking Opportunist Helm and the High Warlord Helm as a good helmet, a good alternative for you to use, and then you see it come up later in mediocre and you're confused, check the annotations below and you'll see, or the comments below, and you'll see that I have ranked them with and without the 2-set. So for example, the PvP helmet is good. It's quite good. And with the 2-set bonus, it's going to be a great option. Without the 2-set bonus, it's not as strong, as the 2-set bonus gives 35 resilience, which is a lot, and it's really good. So I've done that for all the set bonuses that affect the value of the item. So hopefully that'll help for your exact situation, for your exact character's gear, get an idea of how good an item is. You're also going to notice a trend that as we're going through gear, there's a lot of raiding gear that's really good, especially if you do not have the arena set yet. And that is because rogues do not rely on resilience nearly as much as other classes. And depending on your comp, you might want a lot of resilience, but there are definitely a lot of rogue comps and a lot of ways you can build your rogue that runs lower resilience. And you're going to find that overall, a lot of raid items are just better than, for example, blue quality arena items. And so overall, it would be better in most cases to just use raid gear instead of blue PvP gear, because it just has more stats. It has significantly higher stat template, and it just is more powerful. But again, depending on your comp and your situation, maybe you'd prefer weaker overall armor that has more resilience. Maybe it might suit you better. So keep that in mind as we go through the gear. So let's start with the Gladiator leather helm. The best helmet. There are other options from Raid. You've got 3 different helmets from tier 4 rating, and you also have the badge head that's also pretty good. When it comes to helmets, the Wastewalker set, you're going to see this throughout the video. The Wastewalker set is like sneaky good in PvP. And hit is not as good in PvP as it is in raiding. And something to keep in mind, if you have like way too much hit already, I would not recommend going for the Wastewalker 2 set. But you are going to want, in PvP, I mean, 5% hit is the bare minimum, so your abilities don't miss. But even additional hit, like going up to 7% hit is really good, because there's a lot of talents that cause you to increase your chance to miss that enemies can spec into. And there's also going to be, if you end up hitting a target that has defense, it can increase their chance to miss as well. So even going up to 7-8% hit is definitely good in PvP. Once you get kind of past that point, I would not prioritize something like a Wastewalker set to go from like 9% hit to 11% hit. Maybe that's a little overkill. But with that said, the Wastewalker 2 set is going to be good, especially if you're lacking hit early on, and it's surprisingly quite a strong set, even in PvP. So you'll see that throughout the video that there are some good options to use Wastewalker. You also have 2 different sets, and I want to be clear, you can synergize both of the sets together. You have the armor that comes from reputation, right, that you can get from the various reputation vendors, and you also have the armor that comes from actually honor vendors themselves. And the set bonuses are technically different, which is good and bad. If you get the full 4 set, or if you get 2 of each, you get 2 sets of the 2 set bonuses of the 2 set 35 resilience. You don't get the 4 set. So hopefully that was clear, that they are technically separate sets. So you can get the 35 resilience rating bonus 2 different times if you run 4 pieces, 2 of each. So keep that in mind, that you can do that. And that's going to be important, as you're going to see that if you don't have the 2 set, the items aren't very good. With the 2 set, they're pretty decent. So that's really important, that you would want to run like 2 and 2 generally of the PvP, or the I guess both versions of the PvP armor from the different sources. You've got some other options as well here. Again, I won't go through literally everything, but like I mentioned, the Wastewalker set here, I listed it both with the 2 set and without. Same thing with the PvP blue set. Now, on to the shoulders. Now, the Gladiator shoulders are best by far. It's not even close. You might know from rating, there's not that many good shoulders. So, yeah, Gladiator shoulders are quite good. Now, if you don't have the Gladiator shoulders, Wastewalker, again, sneaky good. If you need to hit, they can be quite good with the 2 set, especially in this shoulder slot, because there's not very many good shoulders. You also have some raid shoulder alternatives, which are quite good. And if you have the 2 set bonus, the PvP shoulders are good as well. Again, individually, the Wastewalker shoulders are still good. And individually, the PvP shoulders are kind of all right, but there's some other better options if you don't have the 2 set bonus. So lots of different alternatives here for shoulders as well. On to the chest. Now, this is where things get crazy, right? Obviously, the Gladiator leather tunic is going to be best in slot if you want the 4 set bonus. But if you do not have the Gladiator leather tunic, or you don't have the 4 set, or this is your first piece of Gladiator gear to buy that you were planning on buying, it is not even individually best in slot in terms of pure stats. Primal Strike is better if you have the set bonus, which again, a lot of you aren't, but just in case you're a leather worker. Netherblade is individually better just on its own. And Gladiator's Tunic would fall in line as like the 3rd best chest if you didn't have set bonuses. But a lot of situations you are going to use the Gladiator leather tunic for set bonuses, either that or the legs, but you can use either really. So just keep in mind that while you do really want that 4 set bonus, the chest and the legs are kind of the flex items. And if you are not 2K rating, you don't even have that option. You're going to have to use the chest for the 4 set because you don't have access to the shoulders. But again, if you're someone who is high rating has all the gladiator pieces at their disposal. You can swap out of the chest because Netherblade chest is actually individually better. Primal Strike is going to be better if you have the set bonus, and a lot of these other raid alternatives are very close. Terror Weave and Chest of Carnivore. So again, this would be like the last gladiator piece to get if you had to choose, because it is just individually, worse than something you might even get just from raiding. On to other chest options. Again, Wastewalker 2 set can be quite good. The Opportunist set, again, quite good with the set bonus. Without the set bonus, Wastewalker and Opportunist are still very good, and there is a Shadow Prowler BOE that you can get, but you're going to see that there's really not a lot of great chests outside of these options. There's some other random chests that have stats, but these are the main chests to look out for. On to the wrists. Now, wrists, again, are interesting. Technically, if you have Primal Strike, running the 3 set would be best in slot, but General's leather bracers are going to be what most players are going to use, and they're just the best. Definitely something to spend your honor on, as it is best in slot for the vast majority of rogues. Other wrist alternatives, you can get the Ogre Law bracers. You can even Primal Strike without the set bonus is still quite good. And Nightfall wrists are also going to be really good from Old Hillsbrad. When it comes to other options, there's really not a ton, but Bracers of Maliciousness and Shackles are still kind of decent from Quagmire. On to gloves. Now, gloves is kind of boring because, there's a lot of items on this list here, but you're probably going to only equip one of two, right? You're either going to use the Gladiator leather gloves or some form of the blue glove, whether it's Opportunist or High Warlords. And the reason for that is Deadly Throw gets the ability to interrupt spell casting, and actually it becomes like a mini kick for 3 seconds. That's just a really potent effect in PvP. Being able to interrupt from range or have even just a second interrupt in case you miss your kick is really good. And yeah, you're just going to want to run these gloves in most cases. So Gladiator gloves are best. If you don't have Gladiator gloves, you're probably going to be running some combination of one of the blue items. But if you do not need Deadly Throw to interrupt, and you don't need to worry about it for whatever reason, Grips of Deafness are really good. And even though, and Liar's Tongue gloves are really good too, but that's only if you don't need the Gladiator set bonus. All right, on to the belt. When it comes to the belt, Primal Strike is technically best in slot, again, if you're going to run the 3 set. Individually, it's not quite as good as some of the other pieces. You're generally going to be going with the belt from Honor. It's just the best overall belt. But the Gruul's belt is not too bad, and Girdle of Treachery is not too bad, and the Biss PvE belt, Girdle of Death Dealer, is also not too bad. There's also some okay blues, but you've got a few different purple options here in the belt slot. It's kind of the theme. You're going to notice that you've got the best PvP item, you've got a few different raid items as like the best option, and then below it you've kind of got some like blue dungeony stuff that you can get. Onto legs. Now, technically speaking, Skulker's legs are best in slot if you do have the space in your set. Again, some of you will not be able to use these because you will not have Gladiator shoulders if you're not 2K rating, which means you are going to run the Gladiator 4 set of head, chest, leg, and gloves. But if you have the space, this is what Mir does. He uses the leg slot and puts Skulker's Greaves in there with 3 attack power gems. So this is a huge damage increasing item. But if you don't have Skulkers, Netherblade Breaches are barely behind it and can be easier to get. And then obviously the Gladiator legs are quite good as well. And a lot of you are going to use it for the 4 set. Beyond that, again, Wastewalker 2 set's an option. And the Opportunist or High Warlord legs are a decent option as well if you have the 2 set. On to the boots. Now, when it comes to the boots, you're going to be using Master Treads because of the effective stealth level, but individually they're not the greatest. They would only be kind of in this good tier when it comes to pure stats, but the effective stealth level bumps up their value to being the best pair of boots. If you are not worried about getting detected in stealth, Edgewalker long boots are the best option, followed by the Marshall's leather boots. They're both really good. On to the accessories. We've got the cloak. The cloak is Drape of the Dark Reavers. This is the best cloak that you can get. There's a bunch of other cloaks that are also good. This is the best one. All the other cloaks are almost like deadlocked, tied. They're very close together, but Drape is the best. And if you don't have Drape, it's not a huge deal. It's not a big difference. It is a raid item. The PvP cloak is still really good. The mag cloak is good. And some of these other options are going to be, honestly, kind of hard to get. These are like seasonal items from a holiday event. This is world boss loot. That's a really expensive BOE, but they're close to some of these other alternatives. And you got some other things that you can shoot for if you can't get the best option. Over to the neck. Now, when it comes to the neck, you've got, again, more options that are really similar. This is again from an event, I think the festival for that goes on through June. So this might be out really early, but it might not. It's from Lord Ahun. So you're probably going to get Choker of Vile Intent from badges or Worgen Claw Necklace if the amulet is not available. It says phase 5 on it on Wowhead, so maybe it's already been decided that this is going to come out later and I missed that, but Worgen Claw Necklace and Choker are neck and neck. One's from raid, one's from badges. If you can't get either, Pendant of Triumph is good, Saber Claw Necklace is good, Bone Chain Necklace is good. Below that is quite a big drop down, so I would try and use one of these 6 if you can get your hands on it. After that, we've lastly got the ring, and Garona's Signet is going to be your best ring with Ring of Recalcitrant back to back. If you don't have either, the Ring of Thousand Marks is part of your best in slot from Karazhan with rating is also amazing, and this World Boss ring is also quite good, but obviously going to be hard to get. You can also use a few different iterations of the Karazhan ring as it gets updated. It's quite good throughout the various ranks, and even the PvP ring is pretty decent, as well as this like Ogre Law ring you can get as well. So with that said, that is all the gear. Again, there's a few different options. You have them in your best in slot list. You can technically play leatherworking for whatever reason if you're not into leatherworking with the stats I set up. If you include the 40 attack power set bonus, that would total us to 38,010 attack power. So technically, if you're not a leatherworker, you can just ignore this, but if you do have leatherworking, if you are making Primal Strike, it is technically 9 attack power better than Mir's best in slot list, assuming that you're going to lose out on the Trinket and the Mace. So it's not better, to be clear. Leatherworking is not best in slot, but if you already are leatherworking for like raiding, leatherworking is good and is worth using Primal Strike, especially early on if it saves you a lot of time from getting like different wrists and belts. So hopefully that's clear. There's also another alternative setup you can use if you do not get the Skulker's legs and you are someone that has all of the Gladiator pieces. You can go with the Netherblade chest, and it kind of bugged out here, but the Netherblade chest is going to be the better option instead of running, the Glad chest, right? You can do a little swap there if you want to fit in that item. But that's it, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Again, thanks for watching, guys. And if you have any questions about item or gearing, I would encourage you to check out the link in the description, look at a more detailed view of all the items, and obviously put your questions in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you guys next time.